Hi everyone, how are you all doing? Welcome back to the channel. For those who don't know me, my name is Bruno Villas and today I'm going to tell you another story. If you're new here and haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss notifications, because that way every time I post a new video, YouTube will notify you and you can rush here to watch with me. Guys, a lot of new people are coming here and I would like to take this opportunity in this video to welcome all of you who are joining. I'm very happy to have you here and I would like to take this opportunity to say to you that we have over 170 videos here on the channel, and I will leave a playlist in a pinned comment with a bunch of cases for you. Guys, the older videos don't have as much image and sound quality because we evolve over time, right? It's natural, but they were all made with a lot of care and I hope you like them. But now folks, let's get to what matters and let's dive into today's case. For us to understand why this case was so popular at the time and drove New Zealand newspapers frantic and people crazy about the trial, we need to go back a little in history and clarify a detail. In the 1950s, homosexuality was considered a disease and various doctors and psychiatrists gathered with the intention of creating a cure. Estrogen-based therapies were common in male individuals and regarding women, homosexuality was commonly associated with character deviations, rebellion, and demonic possessions. It was only in 1990 that the World Health Organization, WHO, removed homosexuality from its list of diseases. This decision did not end prejudice and discrimination, but it was an important step towards understanding homosexuality as a sexual identity that does not require a cure. I am saying all this because at the time of the events involving today's case, two girls were classified by various newspapers of the time as the first homosexual couple killers in the country's history. However, that wasn't quite the truth, and you will understand why. And now we will learn and know everything about the Pauline and Juliet case. Pauline Parker was born on May 26, 1938 in Christchurch, New Zealand. She was the daughter of Herbert and Honora Happer. The couple had a small business in the city and led a very simple life. They had a small fish shop and were well known in the region. Pauline had an older sister named Wendy, and her childhood and adolescence were quite troubled. When she was just 5 years old, she was hospitalized for osteomyelitis. Osteomyelitis is a medical condition characterized by a process of infection or inflammation in a bone, which can be caused by a bacteria or fungus, for example. Despite surviving the painful treatments, she began to suffer chronic leg pain throughout her youth, which indeed obviously prevented the young girl from participating in all the physical activities at school. This left the girl quite frustrated because she was interested in and greatly admired sports activities. Pauline then leaned towards the arts and also demonstrated a unique talent for creative writing. The parents of the sisters, Pauline and Wendy, were never religious, but despite that, the two spent some time attending the East Methodist Church, and it became common for them to go on outings and also camping trips organized by the church. It was at Christian Church Girls High School, an all-girls school, where Pauline and her sister studied, that Pauline met a girl named Juliet Hulme, and from then on the formation of an unbreakable friendship would radically change the course of the two girls' lives. Juliet Hulme was just a few months younger than Pauline, and they were in the same school year. The girl Juliet was born in England, but unfortunately was hospitalized with tuberculosis while still a child. Because of this, the doctors said that the cold climate of that country would only worsen the little girl's condition, and so she and her family were sent to live in South Africa and then in the Caribbean. The idea of the health professionals was that warmer climates would be beneficial for the girl's recovery. Just as she entered adolescence, at almost 13 years old, her father, named Henry Hulme, a renowned physicist of the time, was appointed as the rector of the University of Canterbury in New Zealand, and with that, the family ended up moving to Christchurch. Juliet's family never protested and accompanied the husband wherever he went. As I mentioned earlier, the friendship between Pauline and Juliet developed deep bonds and the two soon became inseparable. The two girls shared a common dream, the dream of becoming famous. Both were very creative, and one would ignite the imagination of the other and soon created a parallel world of fantasies and desires. Whenever they had free time at school, or even when they were at each other's houses, the girls would spend hours inventing stories that they would live out. They made plans for when they would be famous and internationally known. They even created new names to call each other. They would be Gina and Deborah. The peak of their careers would be to make a fortune as actresses in Hollywood cinemas. At first, the families of both girls were very happy with the girls' friendship, but after some time this friendship began to become a cause for concern because they wouldn't leave each other's side anymore. A few months later, Juliet was hospitalized again for the same reason. Tuberculosis seemed like it wouldn't give any peace to the girls' family anytime soon. On the other hand, both Juliet's family and Pauline's family were somewhat relieved because it was an opportunity for the girls to spend some time apart from each other. But this separation didn't last long because as soon as Juliet was discharged from the hospital, the two friends resumed their friendship even more intensely, because for them it was a sign that the two were predestined to live together and that in this way they would overcome any barrier. The girls even called their parents to talk and said that they were working on several novels that would become excellent books. Their intention was to move to North America, where they would sell their stories and books to be adapted in Hollywood. Pauline's parents became really very concerned about the dependency that their daughter showed towards Juliet. With this, they made the decision to take their daughter for a consultation with the prominent psychiatrist in the region. The professional evaluated the girl and informed the parents that he suspected the two had a romantic homosexual bond. During this same period, the curious girls Juliet and Pauline discovered that Juliet's mother was having an affair with a man named Walter Perry. Adultery by women at that time was viewed with great disapproval and was also considered a social disgrace, and thus Juliet's parents' marriage became quite compromised. A few weeks later, Dr. Henry, Juliet's father, filed for divorce. Up to that point, for the girls, everything was fine. The problem arose when Juliet's parents decided that she would leave New Zealand to stay with a relative in South Africa. Her father said he wanted the divorce documentation to be ready soon because he was too embarrassed by the whole situation, and resigned from his position at the university. He no longer wanted to live in the city. That's when Pauline and Juliet became desperate with this terrible decision, and they refused to accept being separated from each other in any way. Juliet then suggested that Pauline go with her and her father, but it was evident that neither her parents nor Pauline's parents would agree to that. The two were 15 years old, and that idea was categorically unacceptable. In June 1954, the girls began to plan something terrible. In their minds, they had the solution to all the problems that had been created to prevent them from being together. On June 22, 1954, Honorio took his daughter Pauline and her friend Juliet for a walk in a park called Victoria Park, in the city of Christchurch itself. The three used a local kiosk to have tea and chat. The content of the conversation was not pleasant, but even so, they left the kiosk together and went for a walk in the park. Shortly after, the two girls ran back to the kiosk covered in blood and desperately screaming for help. They were received by Agnes and Kenneth Rich, the owners of the tea house. They then said that Honora had fallen and hit her head. Honora Ripper's body was found by Kenneth Rich. Honora had large lacerations on her head, neck, and face, as well as small injuries on her fingers. The police were called, and Honora's body was sent for analysis. The authorities quickly began to investigate the case and interviewed the families of the two girls. The police soon discovered the murder weapon in the nearby forest, and the story the girls told about the death being accidental quickly fell apart. Later that same night, the police found the diary with Pauline's notes. On the next day, July 23rd, the girls were arrested for murder. The investigations proved that the girls used a brick inside an old sock and advanced towards Honora. The two were possessed by a terrible rage and took turns in the task of striking the woman Honora suffered multiple injuries and the cause of death was numerous traumas to her skull. Before the trial began, it was discovered that Honora Ripper never actually married Herbert Ripper, the man known as her husband. She and Pauline were referred to by their maiden names during the trial. Therefore, they were referred to as Honora Parker and Pauline Parker. The trial gained considerable notoriety and generated much speculation about the possible homosexuality and insanity of the girls, since the girls were too young to be sentenced to capital punishment under the law. In New Zealand at the time, they were convicted and sentenced to be detained, at Her Majesty's pleasure. In practice, this sentence meant that they would be detained at the discretion of the Minister of Justice. The girls' defense presented a claim of mental insanity, but the jury rejected the defense's argument, and on August 28th, both were convicted of murder. The motivation for the murder was the idea that if she were without her mother, Pauline would finally be sent to live with her friend Juliet. Obviously, this idea made no sense. In fact, they began to imagine that they would be imprisoned together. But that is not what happened. Each of them was sent to a different prison. They never saw each other again after that. Pauline spent 5 years in Papahua prison, which is about 20 kilometers from where her family lived. As soon as she was released, she enrolled at the University of Auckland and graduated in 1964. Afterwards, she worked for a year as a librarian, and then moved to England. There she worked as a librarian in London for a while, but soon gave up the profession. In 1997, a New Zealand journalist found Pauline Parker in a small village in Kent, England. Pauline had changed her name to Hilary Nathan, and was now a devout Catholic who taught scriptures to children, in addition to teaching them horseback riding. As for Juliet Hulme, she served her sentence and returned to England, where she became a flight attendant. For a period, she lived in the United States and joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in 1968. Later, she settled in the Scottish village of Port Mahomack, where she lived with her mother. She changed her name to Annie Perry and later became a great British writer. In 2006, she gave an interview where she stated that she and Pauline were never homosexuals. She admitted, however, that although they were never homosexuals, their relationship was completely obsessive. Juliet, who was now called Annie Perry, said that regarding her involvement in the murder, she had made a profoundly wrong decision. She added that she was afraid that Pauline would take her own life, and she would live forever with the feeling of guilt. Regarding her imprisonment, she recounted that she became the only child imprisoned in the women's prison of Mount Eden in Auckland. She stated that she spent the first 3 months in solitary confinement where she cried a lot, completely remorseful. She was released at the age of 21 and was taken to England along with her father. Annie Perry is the author of more than 50 crime novel titles. When her mother passed away, she went to live with her brother, a retired doctor, still currently in Port Mahomack, on the east coast of Scotland. She is also completely involved with the Mormon community after she converted to the church 35 years ago. In 2017, Annie Perry left Scotland and moved to Hollywood to more effectively promote the films based on her novels. And now I want to know what you think about this. Was their sentence fair? They spent less than 10 years in prison, were released, and went on with their lives. Both received new names, and one of them even managed to achieve the dream of being famous and recognized, with another name, of course. What do you think about all this? And for those who stayed with me until now, you know right, folks. Leave a like, it really motivates me to keep bringing this type of content here for you. I'll stop here and see you in the next video. Bye.